learning to live with uncertainty and tolerating it is one of the most essential skills that you can have in your life. And I think you guys also agree because I made a poll a couple days ago and you also told me the same thing. So in this video, I want to talk about what I actually do in my life to tolerate all this uncertainty in our lives. Because we all know that it's not going anywhere. We have talked about this many times. Uncertainty is one of the constants of life. It's not going to go anywhere, and most of the times we will have a lot of uncertainty in our lives, whether it's in our school, whether it's in our careers, whether it's in our relationships, our health. The times that we don't know what will happen is much greater than the times that we know what will happen. So there is only one way that we can actually live our lives, is to be able to tolerate this uncertainty. So the first concrete step, and the best one in my opinion, is to take the next small step. So when you look at any situation, you cannot see the broad picture. What do I mean by that? For example, let's say that you have an exam. You have an exam that you need to study, or you have a project at work that you need to submit in a month, for example. And when you think of this whole exam or this whole project or this whole thing that you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, it looks a bit too much because there is a lot of uncertainty. Are you going to be able to make it in the next month? Are you going to be able to present it good? Are you going to be able to come up with a concrete result? Are you going to be able to make other people who listen to you like the project that you're preparing? Or are you going to take a good mark from the exam? These are too broad, and there is a lot of uncertainty when you look at it from a bigger picture. But if you just focus on the next concrete step, for example, the next topic that you're going to study, or the next part of the project that you will start preparing, this will take a lot of weight from your shoulders. And personally, I have experienced this with my shoulder injury. So a month ago exactly, I dislocated my shoulder. And I'm a guy who cares a lot about how he looks and how physically capable he is. And I'm a guy who is really active. I do martial arts, I do weightlifting. I am a very active person. I go runs and stuff because I genuinely enjoy doing this. I genuinely enjoy having a healthy body and being capable. And last month, when my shoulder first got dislocated, I literally went to the ground at my martial arts gym and I started crying. And my coach and my friends who were at the training thought that I was crying because of pain. But I wasn't actually crying because of pain. I actually started crying because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know whether my martial arts career was over. I didn't know if I would be able to return to weightlifting any soon. I didn't know if I was going to need surgery. I didn't know what was the next step. And all this uncertainty just was a lot to me. And especially when it was something that I cared about a lot, it was literally crushing. I was feeling a lot of pain. Not physical. I was of course feeling a lot of physical pain, but the mental pain that I had because of this uncertainty was much greater. And if I just thought in the similar way that I did exactly when that injury happened, if I just looked at the broad picture all the time and just asked all these questions and I would have gone crazy. I wouldn't be able to make it out of that whole situation. But after that night of some self-pity and all of this uncertainty, I just made myself a promise. I told myself that I'm going to focus on the next concrete step only. And from that point on, I just started thinking about the next step. So what I was going to do tomorrow. Can I go to the gym? Yeah. Can I train some legs? Yes, I can do that. So I will start doing that. I will not obsess over what will happen in 2 months or something. Then I just put myself back together. I went to gym and then I thought to myself, now what am I going to do next? I can take an appointment from the surgeon, the orthopedic surgeon, to check on myself. And then I called the hospital and did that. And once I started taking these next concrete steps, it started feeling easy on me. I stopped looking at the bigger picture. I stopped what was going to happen in 3 months or 6 months or at the end, if I need surgery or not. I started focusing on the next step, and it made things much clearer on my head, and it made me able to progress in what I was doing. And then I took the next step. And then I asked the question again, what can I do now? What can I improve? Even if it's a very little thing that I can do for myself, I will go and do that thing. It doesn't matter how small it is. I will go and do that next concrete step. And in everything that you go through in life, if you have this mindset of taking the next small step, it will be much easier to deal with all of this uncertainty rather than just going on a war with the broad picture, with everything at once. So please, just think about what you can do next. It doesn't matter how small it is, just think about the next concrete step. And even this step alone will make life much more easier, especially when dealing with uncertainty. So the next 2 steps that I'm going to talk about are somewhat not really like they're not very concrete actions that you can take, but they are still some mental reframes that you can have that will help you. But before I tell you those, if you enjoyed my content so far, and if you enjoy the things that I'm talking about in this channel, it would be great for you to subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to build up a community where we try to improve our lives and just pull out some lessons from our personal experiences. And it would be really helpful for my channel if you could subscribe, if you of course like my content. If you don't, of course I cannot force you to subscribe. That would be great for my channel. And now I will talk about the step 2. So the second thing that I would like to mention is that in the grand scheme of things, you will be okay. So this shoulder dislocation that I've been talking about recently, it was one of the injuries that I feared the most. When I saw a video about it, or when I thought about just having a shoulder dislocation, I was devastated, and I was very afraid that if something like this would happen to me, I would be done. My whole sports career would be done. I would need surgery and everything would collapse on my head. However, when I actually experienced this shoulder dislocation, yes, it was a very bad situation, but I'm doing fine. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, after a month of this shoulder dislocation, I'm probably not going to need surgery. I have been through some MRIs and some appointments, and currently I'm doing fine, and I will be back to training, and it just has been like 4 weeks. So it was a 4-week period that just set me back, and now I'm slowly gonna get back on track. So at the grand scheme of things, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And this is something that we must understand. As humans, we most of the times tend to think about the worst case scenario, or we exaggerate the things that we think if we go through that would destroy us. But you probably underestimate the amount of suffering and the amount of problems that you can go through and come back at the other side in a good shape. You actually have a lot of capability to undo things. You can endure a lot of things in your life. You can become really resilient. And you probably are, but you're just not really aware of it because you haven't gone through enough trials and tribulations in your life. But even if the worst case scenario happens, and I hope that it won't happen for you, it did for me, it is not as bad as you think. I know it sounds difficult to understand when you just look at it from a normal person's perspective. Like, you can say to me, like, how can you say that it's not as bad as I think? It's the worst case scenario. What worse could there be? But trust me, when you just experience that bad thing, or that thing that you were very afraid of, after some time, you will realize that you're going to be okay. Even in the worst case scenario, you are resilient and you can come out of the other side. It can be hard. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Of course it will be hard. Of course it will be challenging. But most of the times what we think of the event is much worse than what it actually is, what you actually experience. So don't forget this, please. And the third and the last thing that I'm going to mention is that the only way that you're going to get used to living with uncertainty is to live with uncertainty. Unfortunately, yes, like I said, there are some steps that you can take and some reframes that you can have in your mind to have a better relationship with uncertainty. But just like everything else in life, there is no such thing as just getting ready for all of the uncertainty without actually experiencing it. For you to get used to living with uncertainty is to experience more of it as you go through your life. So just go through uncertainty, live with uncertainty, and life will force you to do anyway. So you don't have to try just creating uncertainties in life, because life is already full of uncertainties. And the only way that you're gonna get used to living with it and actually having a better relationship with it is to live with uncertainty. There is unfortunately not a lot that you can do right now to just get ready for all of the uncertainty and just fix your whole relationship with it at a single time. That is not possible. The only way that you learn to live with it is to live with it.